Hey, listeners, before we get started today, I want to give a quick shout out and word to our sponsor, our very first sponsor, Rapido Solutions Group. Danny Frisco and Roberto Icaza, two longtime friends of mine, guys I've known for 10 plus years, the CEO and COO, respectively, and co-founders of Rapido Solutions Group. These guys know what they're doing. I'm excited to be partnered with them to give you a little glimpse into their business. Rapido connects logistics and supply chain organizations in North America with the best nearshore talent to scale efficiently, operate on par with U.S.-based teams, and deliver superior customer service. These guys work with businesses from all sides of the industry, 3PLs, carriers, logistics, software companies, whatever it may be. They'll build out a team and support whatever roles you need, whether it's customer, carrier sales support, back office, or tech services. These guys know logistics. They know people. It's what sets them apart in this industry. They're driven by an inside knowledge of how to recruit, hire, and train within the industry, and a passion to build better solutions for success. In the current market conditions where everyone is trying to be more efficient, do more with less, nearshoring is the latest and greatest tactic that companies are deploying to do so, and Rapido is a tremendous solution for you. So check them out at gorapido.com, and thank you again for being a sponsor to our show, a great partner. We look forward to working with you. And to our listeners, that's it. Let's get the show on the road. Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. We're changing things up today. As if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm not alone. I don't have one guest. I've got two. We're doing a little panel action. We've got a topic we're going to focus on today, and that topic is recruiting. I've got two of the industry's most well-known, finest recruiters in the game joining me today. Welcome to the show, Charlie Saffro and Brent Orsuga. How we doing?
Great. Happy to be here. Finally making it happen.
Yep. I mean, yeah, we had a couple reschedules, all my fault per usual, but I appreciate you bearing with me. And let's start this off with something easy. We're going to start with you, Charlie, ladies first.
Thank you.
Just give me a bit of your background, kind of your professional career journey, and what's gotten you kind of from where you were to here today. Not in terms of the meat of like how you did it, but just kind of the steps along the way, and tell me a little bit about your business.
Sure. So, I never thought I would be a recruiter, and I certainly never thought I would be in the logistics, transportation, and supply chain industry, but this is where we end up. After about 6 years of working in marketing, I went to work for my husband's company, actually, which was a logistics technology company. Long story short, very small team when I joined, started to go through a huge growth spurt, needed someone who could help with the interviewing and onboarding, and I raised my hand. This was early 2000s. So I was using Craigslist a lot to recruit, using a lot of those flyers with like my name and number at the bottom. But I got creative, I got scrappy, and helped them grow to well over 100 employees in 4 years. When they sold the business to Internet Truck Stop, actually, I became a freelance recruiter, had a couple projects. And honestly, I'm going to say it was opportunity that drove me to create my business. I was not planning to be an entrepreneur. I didn't go into this with a business plan or a loan. I just saw opportunity and seized it. And I think we're all that person that it's like, we're either going to take this and run with it and do the very best, or we're going to walk away before we fail. So I ran with it, which ultimately led to about a year as a solopreneur, and then just got too big to handle it myself and started building a team. So today we're 14 years old as a company. It's wild to think I've been doing it this long. We've about 30 people on our team, and we focus exclusively in this greater industry. We work on all roles of all levels, not truck drivers though, and not warehouse folks, but really any salaried position from an entry-level sales rep all the way to that C-suite. And we also offer executive search and consulting services. So that's very high level, but I know we're going to get into all the details.
The only thing I think you left out was the name of the company.
Oh my gosh. The name of the company is CS Recruiting, which are actually my initials. Easy to remember.
Yep, very easy, except you just forgot. But great. No, thank you for that intro and background. Brent, let's toss it to you. Same thing.
Yeah, so originally from Northern California, the Bay Area, came out to Arizona to go to ASU and been out here, 25 years plus. Done recruiting a long time, very similar to Charlie. I think that my recruiting story goes back to just it's always kind of been in the blood. And I look at it like this: always recruiting kids in the neighborhood to play sports, always recruiting people to go sell baseball cards. In college, it was recruiting, hey, where are we going to go this weekend? So I feel like you've always kind of had that internally and then implemented it into the business world. So done recruiting for what I say 22 years, actually started in the construction industry. So back then, this is when it was booming in Arizona. Knew nothing about a superintendent, a project manager, any of these positions, but had a lot of success and was really mentored and groomed by a very, very high performer, which set the tone for everything. This was before LinkedIn. This was before personal brands were a thing. This was like old school, almost like change your voice, pick up the phone and headhunt. So that has carried with me 20 plus years. Getting into the industry, it actually started back in '09. As we know, '08 shifted everything. In reality, construction went away. And this is when I aligned with Global Trans. And so Andrew and Michael Leto, I go back to them to 2009. This was my first introduction into the industry. Once again, knew nothing, but sat there and learned Freight 101. The reason the industry spoke to me, though, was because I learned really quick those two industries specifically were very similar, being construction and trucking. I hate to say it, but it was kind of a guy's guy, blue collar. It was very natural for me to be myself. You put me in accounting or finance or healthcare, might not be as natural, but for me, it was very fluid. Fast forward to 2014 and had a kind of a fork in the road moment, had a partnership that ended and sat there. And Charlie will remember she was one of my very first calls of the hey, what do I do now scenario. And honestly, Andrew, it was that moment in life that I think a lot of people come to is, hey, maybe I can go and get a position or I'm going to bet on myself. And I did bet on myself. But it's not everything is set out for you when you go on that entrepreneurial path. For me, I had a 1-year-old daughter. Charlie knows this whole story. Sat in a bedroom with nothing. There was no business plan, no contracts, no clients, which is usually pretty key. No candidates, no agreements, literally nothing. But I had a really, really big chip on the shoulder and a massive desire. And that was really all I needed. Fast forward now, we've been around 10 years, and much like Charlie, very niche specific to the industry. I'll even narrow that down to really we play in three buckets. Number one, I'm going to go old school asset. Number two, a ton in what I'm going to call 3PL brokerage. And then number three, I'm going to kind of call it freight tech and everything else. I can put TMS, tracking, visibility, factoring, insurance, kind of a lot under that umbrella. But I think between the two of us, we have legitimately moved thousands of people over the past decade in the industry.
Did you also forget to
He
give the name
did.
of your company?
He
And so
did.
the
And
name
he's
of the company is Pinnacle Growth Advisors, and again, based here in Scottsdale.
You guys are so focused on the meat of the business. That's great, though. I appreciate both your backgrounds and introductions there. So, I guess the question I have, just imagining the way you described starting out as Charlie, for you, so both of you, I guess, solopreneurs, is you're just on your own, getting ready to find clients, find candidates. What does that look like as you're getting going? Like, where do you even begin? How do you get people interested in working with you? Do you start on the candidate side? Do you start on the customer side? Like, what does that look like?
a great question. I'll answer, and then we'll hear from Brent. But I when I started my business was around the same time that I put myself on LinkedIn. So I really started my business with a strong candidate network. I had been recruiting in the industry for 4 years. Yes, I was a corporate recruiter, but I had spoken to many people, really knew the competitive landscape. So my goal when I branched out was really to find clients, and I was very lucky that my first several clients came to me. They saw me on LinkedIn. I think all of them reached out with the same message, like, "Hey, I didn't even know, logistics and transportation recruiters existed. Do you know what LTL is? Do you know how to find terminal managers?" And honestly, like I kind of faked it till I made it for those first few years. My big turning point, I would say, personally and professionally, was I took a meeting with Brad Jacobs' team in 2011, very early. I think at that time people were calling it Expo Logistics. There was a lot of skepticism, like, what is this guy going to do? And I went into a meeting with their team. I remember it was like a 6 a.m. meeting at a Marriott by O'Hare. And I faked it till I made it really good. And I walked out of there really with like a job order for 40, 50 people that I had promised I could deliver on. And that's what really pushed me like, okay, now very similar to a brokerage. I have the business. Now I need the recruiters, the operators. And that's when I went out and hired my first employee who is still with me today, 13 years later. But that was really, it was like the inbound came in and I'm grateful for that. And then I started making the effort, and a lot of our business is referrals, which is really very validating in our industry. People come back around if you treat them well, and clients are candidates, candidates are clients. Like everyone just gets meshed together, but you have to ride those waves. So that's high level about me.
Yeah, Brent, before you jump in there, I just have to reiterate, I mean, this industry is so small, and how you treat people will either pay off for you in spades down the road, or it will hurt you and prevent you from future opportunities. Because I mean, people just go from one place to the next, whether it's the same type of company jumping from being a broker to being a recruiter to being a shipper, and everyone, it's a people business. So I appreciate that
Yeah,
comment.
yeah.
Go
I
ahead, Brent.
actually, I'll tell you just real quick. Right before we logged on, I got an email from someone who said, "You placed me at the job I'm at 12 years ago, and now I am looking to start my own company and looking for a recruiter to hire for my team." And I mean, that's the beauty of our industry. Like 12 years ago, I actually did remember this guy, but the fact that he remembered me, he's been in this job the whole time, and I was his first reach out. It's like that's where you're just dropping breadcrumbs and doing good things, and it's the golden rule. It will come back.
My path was a little bit different. I know Charlie spoke about inbound. I went the other way. I had to go outbound heavy, right? So you got to remember, this is 2014 for myself. LinkedIn was not the LinkedIn that we all see today. And, Charlie and myself, over 50,000 followers, this big brand and all this stuff. That was not the case. For me, honestly, it was all hands on deck. I don't want to say I begged for business, but I'll tell you, Andrew, I made it very hard for companies to tell me no, because I needed those wins. I needed the opportunities. And I would just tell them, look, there's nobody, and this was the truth. There's nobody that's going to work on this stuff more than myself. All I'm looking for is a chance. Give me an opportunity to perform. This is contingent. You have nothing to lose. I'm paid on performance. Let me perform. So, I was very convincing at the time, but here's the reality. I worked so hard early on, because I'll never forget those first few clients. What you won't see behind me is the very first check that I got in 2014. I will never forget that. It was $7,500. It felt like $750,000, right? Because it was the first monumental thing. So I keep that behind me for a reason. But early on, what I would do is I had to see who was hiring. Like on LinkedIn, you could see what jobs were out there. I could go on Monster, which was a thing, or Indeed. And then we kind of had to go into reverse engineer mode. Well, who's the hiring manager? Who's the sales manager? Who's leading this train? And then I would proactively reach out to them. Another thing that I think Charlie didn't mention is, before we kind of popped our head up and told everyone how great we are, there were years where this was all behind the scenes. This was years of stacked momentum and years and years of just getting wins quietly behind the scenes. And then we let the market speak for us. Now you have testimonials. Now you have people speaking on your behalf. Because here's the reality. You help one person, you're probably going to help five. Because they all know somebody. You become their person, their guy, their dude, their gal, whatever you want to call it. And then it really started to compound. But for years and years, it was outbound. It was head down producing. Then came up the time where the referrals and inbound came.
Let me ask you this, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the kind of fervor you have, the passion in how you're describing your initial reach outs to companies. And I believe that probably played a role in you getting business.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody, when they're starting in sales, they have nothing, and you're almost playing off of desperation a little bit. And is it possible to make desperation look good? Like,
Here,
does that make sense?
yeah, for sure. I mean, here's how I describe it. I called it inspiration by desperation. So it was how I conveyed the message of just a passion behind the knowledge set that I would give to somebody. It wasn't like, oh my God, my kids can't eat if you don't give me this business. It was that I am so locked into what I do. I can provide you a service at such a high level. All I'm looking for is a chance. Give me an opportunity. But here's another mindset thing that I think is equally important. Nowadays, you have a lot of people wanting to become agents. And I think entrepreneurship, to a degree, honestly, has been over glorified. Everyone thinks it's way easier than it is. I never gave myself a plan B. There was never hey, let me try this and just see if it works. This was what I was going to do. And so every single day, I carried myself accordingly. There was no second option. There was no, let me give this a try and I'll go get a job. So that confidence came from the fact that I just believed so much in the value that I could bring to these companies. And when you bring value to companies, they will come back more and more than you actually think. So I don't think it's desperation. I think it was the opposite of the fact that I could bring them something that somebody else couldn't, and I could feed them in order for them to feed me.
Yeah. Charlie, so Brent said that entrepreneurship is over glorified, and I think I agree with that. I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a minute about just the first few years of both of you starting your business and being on that kind of entrepreneurial journey. What were the most challenging aspects, the parts that people don't see on LinkedIn that you think back to and are like, God, I can't believe I made it through that?
Yeah. I think for me, and this is unique to me, I have always been challenged as an entrepreneur to work on the business and not in the business. And the reason is because I love the business and I really love recruiting. I love connecting people, matchmaking. And so I truly spent the first 10 years as an entrepreneur and a women owned business, but it was not a women led business. I had men on my executive team and I really stayed on the front line. I modeled leadership, but I was recruiting and doing the same job as everyone on my team. And when we would create new positions, I would dive in, get my hands dirty, validate it. So it took me about 10 years to really grow into leadership. I think also I have to give myself a little grace there that, I don't have regrets, but I had 3 kids under 4 when I started my business. Like, who was I to start a business, be a recruiter, be a CEO, and really do it all? And I wasn't. And I knew that was not my strength. So I really was a producer. And I think similar to Brent, like, I can bet on myself. And so I know that if I was a producer, I would not give up. If I was working 24 hours, if I worked every weekend, if I had to get on 3 flights, if I was betting on myself, I was going to drive the business to a point that, we could continue to grow and scale. And I really assumed leadership and shifted my responsibilities in 2020, which was just, a crazy year for everyone. But I'd say the last 4 years of my career, truly working on the business, being strategic, venturing out into other things have probably been the most fulfilling. But Brent, I think you'll agree. Andrew, you'll agree. Like, it's really hard when you start a business to get your hands out of something you love and you're good at, and that's what the business is. So those were my struggles, but I have come a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that before you even kind of mentioned that we would agree. There's something, and maybe everybody's different, but when I think about the first few years of Molo, there was something so fun about being there selling right next to all the salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
and because everything's on the line, and you can't necessarily just count on everyone else to bring the food to the table. You're the head of the table, and at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure that there are customers coming through the door and bringing opportunities to pay everyone's salaries.
Exactly.
Um, and there's just something fun about doing that too, and I think it speaks to a little bit that it is one way to earn a lot of respect from your team and trust and buy-in is to be there on the ground level doing the work with them. And you mentioned your first employee is still with you today. I bet a lot of that was respect earned from them seeing you do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's my two
being in
cents
the
there.
Wild West together. And I'd say what keeps me up at night today as, more of an established leader, is keeping my employees happy. Like, I think that is the root of everything that we're doing in recruiting and retention, and it all goes together. And that is what keeps me up, is when I hear of a situation or I have a sense that somebody isn't fully fulfilled or satisfied that I want on our team.
Great.
And
Brent, thoughts on the same question?
Yeah, and one thing I was going to tap into that you touched on is I can still remember, fortunately visiting your office in 2018, and I'll never forget, I can still picture it. And you and Matt were like on the floor. I remember I would walk in and it was in the back left corner. I think second row is where you sat. And you'll probably remember this. And I'm like, wow, this guy's like, where's your office? And he goes, this is it. And it was just a desk. Like, it wasn't some glorified, corner window with all these windows and everything. And I think that, we'll tap into that. But that's where you even yourself got a lot of that buy-in, is because you led from the front. I always compare it to Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, right? I wouldn't ask people to do something I wouldn't do myself. And I think that's an underrated skill when it comes to leadership. But to answer your question about some of the stuff you don't see on LinkedIn, look, social media, Instagram, whatever you want to call it, it's a highlight reel. People show you what they want to see, and they're going to show you usually all the good. Early on for me, I think one of the biggest skills I had to learn, and a word that I live by still, is a word called equanimity. I've learned this, equanimity. It means to kind of maintain calm when there's duress. And what I mean by that is emotional regulation was huge for me. I used to get really high when things were rocking and rolling and I had massive months and all these placements. That can flip overnight. And then you'll have the next month and you're like, holy smokes, what just happened? And then you can get really down in the dumps and have to be able to balance that. So what a lot of people don't see too is, yes, we may be the faces, but guess what? It's really hard to come home at 5 o'clock and not wear that. I have 2 small little girls. I have a wife. Charlie has her 3 sons. It's hard to mask that. And I don't think that that's what a lot of people show in the real world, is that, hey, we can be these high performers from 7 to 4, 7 to 5. It's not like your phone shuts off. It's not like the day just comes to a halt and all of a sudden I'm playing Barbies, right? It's a really hard dynamic that not a lot of people talk about. But I'll tell you, learning how to balance emotions, be even keeled. Nowadays, I don't get too high, I don't get too low, and I just trust the process, and it changed everything for me.
Is there something you can dive in a little deeper with there, because this is a problem I've had, and I struggle with the term leader, and I've posted on LinkedIn a lot in my day, and I've had people comment like, you're such a great leader, and like it doesn't sit right with me, because I don't think in totality I would call myself a great leader. And I think that there are times where I have demonstrated great leadership, and there are times where I've demonstrated awful leadership, or whatever the opposite of that is, just poor management. And it almost always ties to emotional regulation and being able to manage your emotions when times get tough or when things happen that you don't expect. That was far and away my biggest challenge as an organizational leader. So I would be curious if you or either of you could speak to ways in which you have developed that skill, because that's a challenge for a lot of people.
I'll start with that one. I think one of the biggest things when it comes to leadership is it is about you and it's not. What I mean by that is, when you're leading other people, it's one thing to show them the example, right? I'm a really big believer. I'm always personally going to be the first one in, the last one to go. You're going to see me kind of run into the fire. I'm going to show you what it takes to win at a very, very high level. You have to realize not everybody is you. And that has been still to this day very challenging for me. Brent, not everybody is you. They're not wired like you. They're not all gas, no brakes all the time. And that's okay, right? Understanding the wants and needs of people is very important. What I want might not be what they want. So are you asking questions? Because when you learn as much as possible about the individual, what drives them, what ticks them, what gets them out of bed, honestly, you will develop a skill set of how to lead and manage and communicate with them, because it's about what they want. And as a leader, your goal is solely to help them achieve what they want. not what we want. People will stay with you for as long as they know that their dreams, goals, and aspirations can fit under your umbrella. When that comes to a halt is when Charlie and I take them out. That's the reality. So you have to ask, how much do you truly know your people and what they want?
So that point is spot on. But I just want to dig in try one more time here, specifically around emotional regulation. Are there things that you were able to do for yourself or develop to get better at that?
For me, movement is massive. So what I mean by that is if I have a bad call, I don't sit and swirl in it. I move. Out here in Arizona, I'm going for a 5-minute walk. It's hot. That will do the trick as well. Or I'm always shifting my body because I'm shifting the energy. I'm getting out of a situation. I'm doing a lap. There may be times where, honestly, I'll go and put on a rap song. I'll go and put on a Les Brown motivational clip, Eric Thomas, something to shift the industry very quick. So I have a lot of self-awareness now when I'm off, because the last thing I want to do is sit there and mope and cry and dwell. And I've gotten the ability to shift really quick.
That's great. I appreciate that answer. Charlie, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my answer is very different when I really think about emotions as a leader. And when I reflect back, I think a big reason that I did not lead for those first 10 years was because I'm a feminine worker. I mean, that is who I am. And I have emotions and I'm empathetic and I'm compassionate. And for those first 10 years, I got really thick skin. I was, negotiating with clients and candidates and all the frustrations that come with it. And I let my emotions kind of go to the side. Like those stay, in the personal bucket. And then when I turn on my professional self, like I'm ready to go. And when I became a leader, I leaned into these feminine traits that I have. And I realized that that was the secret to retaining my people. I care. Like that's it. I'm not saying that men don't have these traits, but it is often frowned upon. And in our, rough and tough industry, we don't talk about emotions a lot. We don't always put ourselves in other people's shoes. We don't always care about a human behind a job title. But when I started leading, I read a book called Rocket Fuel. I don't know if either of you have ever read it, but it really distinguishes that there's two types of leaders. There is a visionary leader and an integrator. And in order for a company to be successful, you generally need both to scale. It's very rare that a single person has the qualities of both a visionary and an integrator. And I realized I'm a visionary and like I am living in the clouds half the time and I'm not going to fault myself for that. Like that's where my ideas come from. I wake up in the middle of the night and write myself a text because I have like the next best idea, but I'm not an executor. Early in my career I was, but what I did to solve that was I brought in team members who could support me there. A lot of my team members are very strong integrators. I can stay in my position and throw out ideas all day that they'll put in the parking lot and maybe or maybe not revisit, but it allows me to be emotional. And I would say, honestly, I'm probably the most emotional as a leader than I've ever been because I've just given myself permission. I think where that puts me, maybe the opposite, is like I have a really hard time with logical decisions sometimes. If we have to eliminate someone on our team, like I have a connection to them. My heart is louder than my brain sometimes. But again, I found my place as a leader. I'm not good at everything. I'm not good at laundry. I'm not good at loading the dishwasher or firing people. So, no, but it's really, I've just built a leadership team to support my weaknesses so I can shine in my strengths. And it took a long time for me to get there, but I really think now I'm like, I can be emotional. I can be myself. And I don't think I realized for many years that I was I was Jekyll and Hyde. I came to work as one version of myself, and then I went to the basketball game as the next version. And now, like, I'm truly just whole. So I gave myself permission to have emotions. And I actually think our industry needs a lot more of it.
And Andrew, I want to stay there because I do a lot of coaching, personal development stuff. And just last night, which is interesting timing, I heard something where it said a lot of leaders need to make decisions with their head and lead with their heart. So what's happening a lot out there is you have a lot of leaders who almost make decisions with their heart. Oh, I don't want to let this person go. That they've really been loyal to me. They're a good person. And that can actually hurt you as well because you're holding on to people, which may not even be setting them up to win. So you can see this is a really big thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is finding that balance of, again, the intensity and like the visionary type thing. But what Charlie's saying, and goes back into like the EOS framework, is that integrator and having that empathy. If you put Charlie and I into one body, I think we'd be the most dynamic person there is, right? So anybody that can find that balance will be real dangerous.
Yeah. So to speak to Charlie's comments, I mean, I couldn't help but envision myself in a lot of what you were describing about yourself. And I was unfamiliar with the visionary versus integrator concept from that book, but it does remind me a lot of the relationship I had with my partner, Matt Vogrich, because we wouldn't have worked well without each other, but with each other, it was like, it couldn't have gone better. And I think it's understanding, as you mentioned, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and then being able to fill the gap on the weaknesses with people on a team that can step in and do that stuff. Because execution was not my strong suit, or follow through. I had very low follow through, but a lot of ideas, and could jump in here and there and execute for a few days on something, but needed someone to kind of pick up the pieces of what I left in my wake. So I definitely resonate there. Now, we're supposed to be talking about recruiting, but I love what we just spent all this time on. Let's try to I'm going to try to segue in a way that it makes sense and isn't choppy. So let's talk about kind of how you think about the companies you partner with from a leadership standpoint. And, at the end of the day, you are both an extension of the brand of the company you represent, and they are an extension of your brand, right? So if you place a candidate with a company that has very poor leadership, with no empathy for their employees, and bad practices, that makes you look bad. So I'm curious how you think about that in partnering with companies. Are you looking at leadership? Are you looking at the way that they engage their employees? What are the things that you are looking at as you go into an engagement like that? And let's start with Brent this time.
A really simple formula. If I wouldn't work there, why would I take someone there? Right? It's a very simple formula. If I wouldn't be employed there myself, why would I put my name or recommend that somebody lean into there? So again, I think Charlie would validate this. We do ask a lot of those questions. We do want to get under the hood. Well, a big thing for me over the last decade is I've actually on my own dime gone and visited a lot of these companies. And I'm actually looking for things visually that I'm going to see. What is the environment, right? Culture is very hard to explain, very hard to see. You got to feel it almost, right? So I'm even looking for, what am I using as my senses, seeing, touching, smell, taste, hear, when I walk into that environment? Because is it a loud room? Is it a quiet room? Is this a place where people are not dressed at a professional level that I would agree with? So the more that we can unpack it, I think the better. But absolutely, because I still believe any company is only going to go as far as the leadership is going to take it. And when we're helping people make career transitions, I've always taken the mindset of, where can I place you where there's going to be a runway for 3 to 5 years? That to me is a career, not a job. I don't want to help you go sideways. So in order to find a company where there's going to be growth and trajectory, you really have to understand how they're built, what their vision is. Are nowadays, look, are they financial healthy? That's a thing now, right? How long have people been there? Is it a chop and shop? Is it a turn and burn? Are they looking for books of business? How quickly can someone maneuver here? What does the model look like? Andrew, there's more questions than I think more people don't understand that we ask than anything. So this is a really important topic that now, 10 years ago, Charlie, it might have been a different conversation, right? We kind of needed business. We look back on some of the logos maybe we worked with now. Now we're in a position where we can be picky, and we are. Because when we talk to a candidate, we want to know that trust and rapport is there, that we've done our due diligence and vetted them equally.
Yeah. I mean, I would say when I have this conversation and tell people what I do and the types of companies I target, I think sometimes people are surprised because our ideal client is not a client that has a lot of turnover and vacancies. It's a client in a search that we are working on because somebody was promoted, or because they're growing and adding a new division, or they need an SME in an area so they can expand. And those are the clients we try to partner with. Now, it's a unique position that we're in because it's a lot of he said, she said. Our client at the end of the day is the hiring company. I kind of have a fool me once rule in a lot of situations where, if there's word on the street about a company and, you have to remember, like, we're hearing so much from these candidates too. So, we may talk to candidates and hear about a poor experience at a company, and 6 months later, that company calls to work with us. We need to vet them ourselves, but I'm kind of going into it, almost like imagining their Glassdoor page and, listening to what others have said, knowing that I have to sell that opportunity. And it's not only do I not want to place someone there, like Brent said, it's not in line with our company values. And so that's what we go back to a lot with our clients. Like, we have one value that's do what's right. And that is a value that we think about a lot. And it's like, do what's right for the client, do what's right for the candidate, or do what's right for the CS recruiting employee. And I have to consider all angles. I'll tell you, there was a situation, there's been several of these, but one specifically where I visited a client's office and I just felt really uncomfortable as a woman. And he made several comments in the hour and, was kind of, here's 20 jobs you could work on, but I want to take you for a drink first kind of situation. And that was the fool me once. Like, we broke up with that client. I did not want to place women there. I did not want to place anyone there. But I had to learn that. I had to be there. I had to experience it. And so, yeah, sometimes it's anecdotal and hearsay and from, candidates or potentially clients that tell us their former horror stories, or sometimes they're telling us about a great company, and then that's a company I want to target because I want to work with. So it's really an interesting position as a recruiter because we get the dirt from both sides, and then you have to really figure out, like, what's the truth and what do we want to do based on our observations.
You mentioned Glassdoor. How much time do you both spend looking at Glassdoor? Do you give it, is it a take with a grain of salt kind of thing because it's, salty former employees, or is it there's meaningful stuff here? How do you think about the concept of Glassdoor?
I'd say we take it with a grain of salt, and it's probably more reactive. I mean, we're certainly scoping that out before we take on a new client, but it's more if somebody, if we had a candidate and we wanted to submit them and they say, have you seen the Glassdoor reviews? It's less about us. It's more about these candidates, and that is their source. But again, like, I mean, there's Glassdoor reviews on our company that is not even our CS recruiting. There's another CS recruiting, and anyone can go on there and make any comment. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Like, and companies pay people to make good comments. So it's just like, all the other smoke and mirrors you have to look past and figure out what you care about.
I spend zero time. I don't care, right? Because we have enough intel within our phones that we can text and get the real scoop, and I can usually counterbalance that. It's like Yelp reviews, Andrew. People tend to lean with more negative than positive, and so again, grain of salt, but it doesn't even come up in my world, to be transparent.
And when you say in your phone, you just mean because of, you've been doing this for so long, you have relationships with so many people that you can get pretty much any info on any company. Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, I think people don't realize the power that we have in our phone. Over a decade, think how many calls that we've done. Think how many people we've placed. Think how many people we've met at TIA and FreightWaves and Manifest and all these things. We're one phone call or text away from getting intel on almost anybody. And that is a scary thing that people don't underestimate. One of my favorite things was by Nick Saban when he was talking about players that go into the NFL draft. And he said, look, people are going to talk to you and say one of two things. They're going to say and or but. You want them to say and. Charlie is a hustler, she's an entrepreneur, and she's a great mother, and she's a yogi, and all these things, right? She's very passionate.
Thanks,
The last
Brent.
thing you want them to say is but. She's great, but she's a little shady, but she kind of does this and that. People have got to think about how they would be labeled within the industry. Are people saying and or but around you? Because I guarantee at some point that text is going to come our way.
Yeah. I'll tell you, sorry, I was gonna say, I'll tell you a funny story, Andrew, that I don't think I ever shared with you, but it just sets the tone of the perspective that we have. And Brent, I'm sure you've had something similar. But I remember, what year did UPS buy Coyote?
2015.
Okay, so 2015, we're in our office. Everyone's hustling. The end of the day, I was in the thick of it at that point, and I'm reviewing a list of all the candidates that we had screened that day. And as I'm looking at the list, it's like coyote, 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 and I was like, we never talk to this many coyote candidates. They're generally happy. What is going on? And then I start to dig into the call notes, and it was comments from entry level carrier reps who were saying like, yeah, I saw a lot of guys with suits in our office, and now I'm wondering what's going on, and now I'm starting to not know if I'm going to have a job. And we didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was going on, but I went home that night and I was like, something is happening with Coyote. Like, this is not normal for us to talk to all these people. And they're all saying the same thing, but different, and everyone's confused. And then, like, 2 days later, the acquisition was announced. And so that's just like an example. And, Andrew, I'll tell you, we couldn't even do anything with those employees because they had non-compete. So we respected that. But the point is, like, we get this information so randomly, and then it's our decision. Like, what do I do with this? In that situation, we didn't do much with it, but in others, we really can learn and make an analysis and form a hypothesis and, behave a different way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I wanted to ask, and we're going to go there now, but clearly you just gave me one of the answers, both of you, is how does an external recruiter stand out? How do you create value for your clients through, someone could try to simplify the job to a broker of talent, and you're making phone calls on both sides, and that's the value. And so my question that I would like you to answer is how do you stand out? How do you provide value? And I think one of the answers clearly is now a decade plus of relationships built where you have a lot of information that I wouldn't have if I was just a broker trying to hire some people. So, but would love to hear some more on that topic, whoever wants to go first.
I've always asked two questions when we present somebody. Number one, for a company standpoint, is this somebody that they could find on their own? And number two, is this somebody that they would pay a premium for? We aren't cheap, right? And so that's what people don't understand. When you're using a recruiter, there is a fee associated with that person's head. A company is not only making a hire, making a bet, but they're in theory betting on you to the point where they're actually paying out to get you. So when we have that mindset, I'm not going to now show average. I'm not going to show mediocrity. Charlie and I both know this. There's a lot of misconception that we help people find jobs. We don't. We are brought in by these companies to find something that their internal team maybe couldn't find. Because here's the secret sauce that Charlie and I have. When you send an email, whether it be from Coyote, Molo, Mastery, whatever, there's no mystery card. A candidate right then and there can make the assumption, if I want to talk to this company, right, because they already know who's reaching them out. When they get an email from Pinnacle or CS, they have no idea what direction that we're going to take them. That is where we kind of hold the power, is in that. So for that, we have to play at a premium. And again, going back to your initial question, in our world, we are only as good as the logos that we represent and the people that we take to the market. The market will speak on your behalf when you deliver it a very, very high level product. So I think Charlie and I both have a lot of integrity and passion for doing such. We're not here to blast resumes and get people jobs.
Yeah, and I mean, just on that same note, I think Brent and I, having both been corporate recruiters and probably also having seen a lot of our clients that we work with them when they're in startup mode, I always know there's going to be a point where I might even help them find the recruiters that are going to replace our team. We still probably will be called in for a niche search here and there, but we always know our clients will outgrow us at some point, except for those niche searches. But I think, to me, it's like when I was recruiting as a corporate recruiter, I usually had, a few opportunities, but the same company, the same culture, the same leadership, the same benefits. If it wasn't a match, like, there was nothing else I could do for that person, no matter how talented they were. I wasn't going to force them into our company. The beauty of being a third party external recruiter is, like, we have a portfolio, just like you have a portfolio of carriers. We can choose which companies we share with them based on their needs, their must-haves, their nice-to-haves. And that's really what I think has made us so successful, is the breadth of companies we work with and the breadth of candidates that we represent, helping carrier sales reps get onto the shipper side as a load planner, or somebody from a brokerage move into asset, or vice versa. And I think that's a value that an external recruiter can only provide, because we are literally matchmaking with lots of options on both sides versus fitting a square peg into a round hole like we did as internal recruiters.
Yeah, one of the biggest questions I tend to ask is, it's not about what I have. What do you want? What do you want? Like, that's a question that we ask every candidate. What do you want? Right? Because I'm not going to sit here and pitch you on something. And this is what kind of drives me nuts about some so-called recruiters. They're trying to pitch somebody on something they don't really know a lot about. And number two, they're telling them the perfect candidate. They're coming from the wrong angle. They're trying to pitch before they even ask questions, where Charlie and I, we may slow down a little bit and just assess. What I can take this call 10 different ways. What do you want? What are you desiring? What is your career trajectory? And let's reverse engineering it. Having that relationship with someone like us who can strategically work with you is a very, very important relationship that you have to have within this industry.
It's interesting because it does remind me a lot of growing a brokerage, in that like the first couple of years, all these things you're talking about, you don't have in the first few years. You don't have a bunch of options to take people the first few years. And you're got to do the whole kind of fake it till you make it thing, where it's like, I've only got one company that's paying me to recruit right now, so I got to bring you to this company. And you're not necessarily saying that so directly, but it's just like start a brokerage where it's like, listen, man, I've only got 4 customers tendering me loads. Please take one of these loads. But then as you get to be, where Mola was 6 years in, and you've got, whatever, $600 million of revenue, it's like, I've got thousands of opportunities for you. Like, we can actually support you in a way deeper way than I could have 5 years ago. I don't know why I just am thinking of that.
It's so similar to a brokerage. And it's also, the other thing that's ironic is, like, I think a lot of recruiting firms start cradle to grave, if you will. At least that's how I started. I was working both sides of the desk. We ended up moving towards like that split model. And I mean, that is what works best for us. But a lot of firms are cradle to grave, but it's the same growth model where you're scaling and you have to make that decision. Like, do I want people who can do it all, or real experts that can continue to grow in their vertical? But it's so ironically similar to a brokerage. It just happens to be the space we recruit in.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the interview process. So I think that's an important topic that the industry or our audience would appreciate some feedback from you. So let's first start from the candidate perspective. What are some things that all candidates absolutely should be doing in their interview process, and also some things that they absolutely should not be doing?
Number one, first impressions always matter. I don't care what anyone says. If I was going to be doing a Zoom call, for example, I would be going on there early. I would be testing my audio. I would be testing visually, how does it look? I would also be looking at how is my tonality and energy levels. These things make a massive difference. I can be checked in or checked out within 20 seconds of talking to somebody. Real talk, okay? You have to be able to explain your career journey and story. Why did you make these transitions? What is my personal narrative? What did I do here, right? So many people are just choppy. They just want to send a resume. That is something that if I was a candidate, I would be practicing. I would be explaining exactly what my role was, what I've been exposed to. Stats and numbers still are important. I would explain every transition, good or bad. And I would honestly, Andrew and Charlie, have some accountability. It's not always the company's fault. It's not always blaming the market. It's okay to be like, you know what? I made this move. It really didn't align with me. I probably didn't bring my best value to that seat, and I learned a lot from it, and that's what I'm looking to bring to the next organization. Companies will respect a lot more than my manager was never attentive, the pricing was terrible, they had a terrible tech stack. No one wants to hear that. Your ability to stay positive is going to dictate that call. The minute you become a finger pointer, I'm done. I'm checked out, because I'm not going to then hand deliver you to another company that you're just going to blame when 6 months down the road you're not producing. Stay positive, Focus and practice on your ability to interview, and you will see how that transfers over.
Great answers. Charlie, what do you got to add?
I think the preparation and the post interview can be very, very indicative of a candidate's success and their abilities. So, like, we have one client, no joke, he will make his final decision on a hire asking the receptionist how that person acted when they walked in for their interview and how they treated the receptionist during their wait time in the lobby. Because what he cares about is those soft skills, like the respect. Are they punctual? Are they self-aware? And so that's probably my advice. I think everything Brent said, I fully agree with, but be prepared. And part of the preparation is understanding the company, the role, the people you're meeting with, if you have that information in advance, but it's also be prepared to sell yourself. And I think it's safe to say that we're moving towards more of the skills-based hiring, and selling yourself is not, I was a freight broker at your competitor. It's, I can show up and I am strategic and I'm analytical and I know how to build relationships and I've been trained to cold call. And it's that combination of, hard skills, certifications, tactical training, but then also, like, I want to know who you are as a person. Are you going to be an addition to our culture? Are we going to have good chemistry? And so that's my advice probably for job seekers right now, is to really know what you're good at and lean into it.
And I want to stay there because, Andrew, I think this is important within our industry. I think a lot of people lean on too much the company they were a part of. Well, I worked at C.H. Robinson, I worked at Coyote, I've worked at Schneider, I've worked at Arrive. So, the assumption is people are going to know I'm going to be good. There's people that can sneak into any of those companies, and it doesn't mean their skills are going to be transferable. So I actually think that can be a negative, which we can maybe even dive into this. If somebody's at one place too long, honestly, they can kind of become a one-trick pony. I personally, and I think Charlie may agree with me, I'm more attracted to somebody who has reinvented themselves a couple of times with in their career, because it shows me that they, again, have transferable skills. You do that a couple times within your career, you're actually more valuable than just kind of being somebody who's been at one place for 20 years.
Or different positions. You could be at one place, lots of different positions.
Maneuver.
Yep.
Yeah, don't just be a one-trick pony, 100%. Charlie and I have had those calls with 20-year carrier reps who were making $300,000-$400,000 back in the day. Charlie, great people, great humans, massive value. Where are they going to go?
Reinvent themselves. Yeah. They're not going to make that kind of money again in that role, put it that way.
So there's two things that jump out to me. I've not interviewed very much, so I don't have a ton to add from my own perspective. And I have interviewed people. I don't consider myself a good interviewer, so it was something that I passed off as soon as I was able. But there's two things I think about. One is, Brent's comment around knowing the numbers, knowing your numbers. It could be because I'm a math guy. Math is my strongest, I don't know, school subject, so to speak. So I'm always thinking about that stuff. But when I hear someone tell me their numbers, or I see their numbers on their resume and I ask them about it, I'm doing the math in my head, or I'm looking it up as soon as I can to be like, does this jive? Like, this guy said he was moving 50 loads a day and doing X amount in margin and revenue. And I'm comparing that to my team and thinking, okay, this guy would have been the far and away best salesperson on his team. His company supposedly did 30 million in revenue last year. It doesn't really make sense what he's saying. And there are little dots you can connect to figure that out. So I definitely reiterate that. And then I also think there's an element to standing out. And I don't necessarily know if if my example is going to be perfect here, but there's a guy who I hired, and I honestly hired him because he used the F word. And it was a little bit of a crazy situation where I interviewed him for 5 or 10 minutes, and I was looking at his resume as we were sitting there talking, and he was I don't know if I'm going to say this right, a pharmacology major. He was studying to be a pharmacist. And I had been very casual, and I accidentally said the F word first, but I was like, hey, you were studying to be a pharmacist. Like, what are you doing in a brokerage? And he looked at me and he goes, I just want to make fucking money.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're good. Let's do this. he ended up being the number one carrier rep at Molo for the next like 3 years. So I don't know if that's mirroring where, you know, you pick up on how the interviewer is communicating, their body language, things they say, or it's a little bit of kind of having some brass, you know, whatever to just kind of be that forward and say something like that. Listen, I'm here to make money, man. Like, that just for me was one of my favorite interview situations, and I love that the result 3 years later is he was the top producer in our business. I don't know if you have anything to add to that or thoughts there.
100%. I mean, a lot of the things that I tell these companies, I said, you got to find out people's what I call reasons to win. Where are they at chapter of life? You know, you almost want somebody, as crazy as it sounds, that's going to get married, maybe has a little debt, has a chip on their shoulder, having their first child. How many companies are peeling back the layers to ask these questions? Now, you have to follow HR guidelines, but there's questions that you can ask. It's not always about load count and GP and you know, what account did you turn on? It's not about that. It's about the human being. I know Charlie's a big component of this, but the human back in human resources, right? One of the best questions I love to ask is, tell me what you do at 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. I'm just trying to find out how someone's built. Are you a morning workout person? Are you watching Netflix at night? Just walk me through kind of a day in the life. What does a weekend look like to you? Well, I'm spending a lot of time with my children and my family, and I'm very passionate about that. I just want to understand how somebody's wired, right? Here's a great question too. When was the last time you competed? That can mean so many different things. For Charlie, it could have been a yoga competition if there's such a thing. Andrew, you probably competed this morning in pickleball. Well, I had this really big race that I just want to understand if somebody has that wiring inside of them, because again, you can't buy it, fake it, or inject it. And those, again, are reasons to win. This is exactly what you just tapped into, Andrew.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Actually, the last time I was competitive was with my children last night because I am that mom. But we were playing pickleball and I had to win, but I didn't. But no, what was I going to add to that? I forgot. Keep going.
While you think, I'll say this.
Yeah.
You jogged my memory on something I'll add here. This came from Ted Alling, someone who's been a mentor. He was for the audience. He was our second guest in episode 2. But there were 2 things we got from him, and Brent, you just reminded me of this. But he said I was always looking for people with a PhD, poor, hungry, and driven.
Yep.
I love that. He also said when he would interview people, you guys can't see this or hear it obviously for the audience, but right now I'm a leg shaker. My legs always bouncing. And he's like, when I interviewed people whose legs were bouncing, I always hired them because it just meant they couldn't turn it off, they couldn't stop, they were always going, and that just works. You know, this doesn't work in every industry. That doesn't work in banking, but it does work in brokerage. I mean, you want people who want to go. So I don't know. Everybody's got their own little things that they look for in hiring, and I think this is just really helpful insight you've both shared here.
I'll tell you something funny, slightly inappropriate, but it wasn't me who said it. But one of my early clients, probably like one of my first 3-4 clients, when they were giving me criteria for, it was either customer or carrier sales, they said, find us someone who was a great drug dealer, like a good hustler in college, and at first I was like, oh my God, what business am I in? But I'm not going to validate it, but we all know what they meant. Like, they were the kid in high school that was everyone's source. They never got caught. They had their vendors. They were negotiating. Like, wait, they really do have the skills. Now, you know, there's a whole other side to that. But Brent, I love the 2 questions you said. And I think that is the magic of a great interviewer, is like having that one question that you know what you're looking for. And it's a little bit of an off question. We have a client who notoriously asks, what's your favorite day of the week? And he tells us, like, we're not, you know, prepping the candidates and telling them that, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, wrong answer. Monday, you're lying. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then we'll keep moving on with this interview. So I don't know if I fully agree with that, but it's an interesting concept. And it's really, how do you get to the core of someone without just asking them what drives them?
Well, one of my favorite quotes is, the answer is always in the questions. The answer is always in the questions. You got to get better at asking questions, right? And I don't think a lot of people, though, see, this is what drives me nuts about the job market. A lot of companies are just trying to fill seats. oh my goodness, Jessica left, so all of a sudden we need somebody. That is different than actually being able to hire the best people, especially if you're always hiring, which we can get into. But the worst thing you can do is only hire when somebody leaves, because now I'm in a rush. Now I'm just trying to fill a seat. I'm dodging corners. It's more skill based than actually finding out about the human. Andrew, I want to mention one other thing too. When we talked about interviewing, everyone has seen me post time kills all deals. It is a very real thing. In 2024, you cannot expect to drag people along through weeks and weeks of interviews and keep them engaged. The people that move at a pace are the ones that are going to win. What you don't understand is these candidates are paying attention to that. How you do one thing is how you do everything. If you have the ability to make quick decisions, have the ability to have a formalized process, which most don't, that to me is something as a candidate I'm paying attention to. Because all of a sudden, what happens if I bring a contract, I bring a shipper, I bring all these things that I need done? Is that the pace of the organization? Pay attention to all these things too.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think some thoughts on everything you both just said. The drug dealer comment is hilarious.
But it makes sense,
There's
right?
there's a world where he actually was looking for a drug dealer because his office was low on Adderall, and there's been a short supply of that in the in the States. But no, it does make sense. Hustlers are what we're looking for. And then I think the other challenge, though, or concept I'm thinking about, is you guys have mentioned a few of these questions you think about, is there's got to be nuance in all of this because you know, what is your favorite day of the week? I mean, my favorite day of the week is probably Saturday, and that doesn't mean I won't bust my ass Monday through Friday. And so it's like, I think it's understanding the why behind people's answers.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone asks you that question, what's your favorite day of the week, you shouldn't just say Saturday, or you shouldn't just say Wednesday. It should be,
Why?
listen, I bust my ass Monday through Friday so that I can live the Saturday I want. We're renting a boat this Saturday, and I can pay for that because I busted my ass Monday through Friday. I'm golfing Saturday because I love competing at golf. I want to have my best score ever this weekend. It never happens, but I'm going to try anyways. And then similarly, Brent, to kind of like, what are you doing at 7 o'clock?
Mm-hmm.
Netflix is not an answer that's going to get someone excited, but if there's a way you can explain it in a way that's like, listen, I go so hard
Yep.
Yeah.
during the day. I need to be able to check out. I don't want to have any thoughts at 7 o'clock. I'm going to turn on the TV and watch Love is Blind and watch these fools fake fall in love so they go from 50 followers to 1,000. But I don't want to think. I need to be able to turn my brain off. My point in bringing this up is just to say that, like, for people who are interviewing, like, you are going to get weird questions, and there's a reason people are asking them, but just make sure you understand why you're answering the way you are. Give context, give detail,
Mm-hmm.
and explain in a way that shows the benefit of who you are, even if your answer is you watch Love is Blind at 7 o'clock on
That's
Thursday.
brilliant. Yeah.
Well, and Charlie and I
Exactly.
know this. There's professional interviewers. There's people that have snuck around the industry and gotten jobs for a decade just because they're really good at interviewing. But guess what? They get offers, right? So all I'm saying is prep and practice. You would never go on a date unprepared. Treat it as such in your career.
I've gone on a few dates unprepared, but we're not going to talk about that. I agree with the point you're making. All right, well, let's talk about the other side then. For companies, like, as they're thinking about candidates that they want to hire, what are the trends that you're seeing in the industry right now? Like, what are the things that they are looking for? I mean, we've been in this down market now for a year and a half or longer. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
long it's been now at this point, but it's longer than I've been out of the game. Um, Tell me what you're hearing from your clients in terms of what they're looking for.
Sales. Look, I mean, I hate to say it that bluntly, but it really started around October of 22. I said when C.H. Robinson did the massive layoff, that was kind of the earthquake of the industry. And then I followed all the aftershocks afterwards. But it's the ability to find true hunters, right? People that can actually generate revenue, turn on new logos, I'll even say this, Andrew. There's, to me, what I'm seeing is a demand more in like almost small to mid-sized type companies, base hits, momentum, and win. Even the enterprise and big logos all of a sudden aren't that attractive. We've seen a massive shift for like sales positions for sure. I'm going to say the carrier and account management. I really, and Charlie and I were texting about this maybe a month ago. Hey, what are you seeing? Because the minute I see those phone calls come in, it actually screams health to me. That there is health within an organization because now those operational roles are in demand. So that's something that even in our seat we pay attention to. I will say this, and we talked about this briefly. This is what a lot of people maybe aren't talking about. A lot of the hiring that we're doing is confidential, behind the scenes upgrades. A lot of hiring right now is not, hey, we're in hyper growth mode. We're adding all these seats. We're building this new branch. We're not there. People and companies now more than ever are reviewing everything they have, maximizing the people in those seats and trying to maximize those dollars. So we're doing upgrades that people would never even know about. That again is the power in the relationship with us.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, sales has been hot. And Brent, you said when you see operational roles, that's an indicator of health, right?
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said sales at first. I was like, sales to me is, it's a low risk hire for a lot of these brokerages. They may be desperate. Maybe they're not desperate. They just want, more revenue. But I know Brent and I both offer contingent recruiting policies. So it's like, why not get this person in, give them a short leash? I think where the real flaw is going back to the interviews too, it's the expectations. And really on the hiring side, there are a lot of very skewed expectations. It's not, 1999 backhaulers where you can say, I want to hire someone and I want to see 20 loads on the board on Friday of week one. And that's really disappointing right now is like companies are hiring, I don't want to say with the wrong intentions, but all they want is a book of business, no non-compete. They don't really care about the human or what they're capable of and what else they can do. And that's not fun for Brent and I. It's a waste of money for them. It's a bad reputation now in the market. Like there are so many repercussions to having that model. The other trend I just want to mention, because it's very hopeful right now, is we just started seeing more on the shipper side or like the 3PL side, warehouse management roles. So again, we're not recruiting, at the seasonal or temp level, but supervisors, managers, even director of warehouse operations. And I think it's a result of, people are buying again, companies are manufacturing again and distributing. So that's hopeful for us that we've seen this spike in warehouse talent demand. But yeah, brokerage is pretty typical. It's a lot of sales or that odd vacancy that they need to fill.
Is it fair to say that as goes the freight brokerage industry goes your business? Like when the freight brokerage industry is down, like it has been, you guys see a down cycle in your needs, right? I mean, people aren't hiring as many new carrier reps because people aren't in hyper growth mode. So that's fewer opportunities for you, right?
100%. I mean, I think to us, that was like where we took a hit in 23 was because you do lose a lot of those operational positions. So as a business owner, we got to pivot and go different paths. But it's absolutely, I mean, I hate to say it, but Charlie and I are at the mercy of the market. The market dictates our world. It's not the other way around because we're just serving what the market needs. And so it absolutely impacts our business.
Yeah, I think freight brokerage is a great indicator, but it is amazing how far that ripple effect goes or where it starts because, we are recruiting on the shipper side as well. So when freight brokerages are down, manufacturing, distributing positions are down, asset providers are down. It's such a ripple effect and it just all goes back to supply and demand and consumer behavior. But yes, the freight brokerage, like we are measuring your pulse to manage our forecasting.
And another trend that I'll pick up on just real briefly is you're not really seeing the whole Freight 101 model at the current moment, right? Remember how like you guys would have these massive hiring classes, we're bringing in 20 people. Everything right now is what I'm going to call plug and play. So even as you are interviewing, you want to make sure that you can clearly articulate exactly what it is you do. Because I hate to say this, but there's not a lot of creativity right now. Charlie, I guarantee you get phone calls from brokers that want to go to the tech side. Well, guess what? The way the market is right now, the tech guys aren't really needing that. It's not a desire of theirs. They need, again, Andrew, plug and play. somebody who's currently doing it and is just going to change the jersey. That's a very big trend that we're seeing right now too.
Yeah. And
Why? Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to mention, I read something interesting the other day that I think sums it up. And I hate these terms, but I'm quoting an article I read that there's a lot of confusion right now because it's like the unemployment rate is in a good spot, but then there's people like Brent and I chirping out there that, you know, the demand for talent isn't anywhere near where it should be in a typical year. And the term that I read was it is a white collar recession. And that just like struck me. I was like, oh my God, I would never say that and, you know, describe that or put that in writing, but that is exactly what this country is seeing is there is a recession with white collar talent and companies aren't hiring as much of that. It's a riskier long-term strategic hire versus when we're talking about temp and that blue collar talent. So I don't know, I thought in our industry particularly, like that really made sense to me, and it's something a lot of people aren't talking about.
Well, I think part of that probably has to do with, interest rates being where they were, people able to borrow at astronomically cheap rates and spend money in building their businesses. People were very fat. Their companies, not people, but companies were very fat.
Yeah.
And we're now at a place where everyone's looking to trim and do more with less. And so not only are they certainly not hiring, but they're laying off more. And you have people who got to some fairly lucrative, I mean, the jumping around that happened for a few years where people could get another 10 grand here, another 10 grand there, another 10 grand there. All of a sudden, all these companies have these bloated salaries that 2 years later, as the market goes the other way, they can't afford anymore. And so I definitely think you're seeing some of that. And even companies who are doing replacement just to pay 30 grand less on the salary.
Yeah. I'll tell you the weirdest trend we're seeing, Brent, you might see this also, is we've seen more rejected offers because of accepted counter offers than we've ever seen. So just to explain that, these are people who receive an offer from our client, they go to resign and their current company says, stay, we'll match their salary or we'll promote you to their title. We just need you to stay. And what's weird about it is we see this a lot in like a great resignation because these candidates have so many options and they can leverage one offer to get more in another. But we're seeing it now because the people left that are employed are the most valuable people in a lot of these companies. And so if those people are out there interviewing, those companies are going to hang on as tightly as they can because they're thinking if this guy leaves or this girl leaves, then we have to go get a recruiter or, you know, put another recruiting project on the board and spend money and, you know, lose money and time. So that's, Brent, are you seeing that at all? Because it's very odd to happen in this market, but it's just an indicator that the best talent is probably employed and employers are holding on very tightly.
Yeah, and I'm so anti counteroffer. I think it's the biggest slap in the face. So all of a sudden, last Thursday, I wasn't worth this, but now that I'm leaving, you're just going to give me $10, $20, $30,000 more. If you're not waking up to the fact that that is a disrespectful move, here's the other thing that not a lot of people talk about. When you take what I'm going to call that short money, it's easy, it's comfortable, you're staying put. Charlie, you can't renegotiate for 18 months. Because for the next 18 months, they're going to throw that in your face. Well, we stepped up. We gave you this. We gave you that. You're shooting yourself in the foot as far as that goes. Counter offers are a hard no to me. And what you don't realize is now you've burned bridges with not only somebody like us, but that company you just met with. And when we talk again about the text messages behind the scenes, this stuff hits the streets and not everyone's conscious of it.
Well, I mean, there's a reason people leave in the first place, right? And I'm curious how you think about company loyalty, if that should even be a thing. Should employees feel a sense of loyalty to their employer? Is there a level at which that should be earned? Or is it, is every person should just have their own best interest because they have a family to feed? And if I'm getting 80 grand today and someone offers me 90 for the same job, I should just take it. The concept, because I, as someone who built a business and hired 1,000 people, I wanted to believe in loyalty, and that I felt like we tried to do the best job possible to put our people in a position to win, to take care of them, to create a great environment for them. And so we wanted some level of loyalty. But in the same regard, people got to make the decisions that are best for themselves and for their families. And if there was a job that someone could get that paid them more than I was willing to pay them, I didn't stop them or try to stop them. If I thought they could make more money with us over time, and I thought maybe they were making a decision that I thought was not wise because of X, Y, or Z, or what happened a lot was I would tell them, I know that company and I know they're not good and I know you're going to regret going there. That happened a lot. The grass was not usually greener in our case. But just talk a little bit about that concept and if, how people should think about that loyalty.
I think
I mean,
the number one thing an employee should think about is their ability to have leverage. If you are an average employee, a low performer, you have no leverage. If you are a really good person, you have the leverage to go and have what I'm going to have hard conversations, right? So what I would want to do, Andrew, is I would want to be able to look at you man to man and be like, Andrew, this is kind of where I want to be in 3 years. How realistic is that here? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just very curious. If I'm a high performer, I'm going to be able to have that high level conversation with you. Right then and there, my assessment can then be made. I respect it. I hear you. I may have to go explore other options. See, I can't do that when I'm an average Joe. So what I need to do first and foremost is put my head down and produce and get selfish with my production before I get selfish with where am I going to be in 3 years.
I think that's a good point. And I mean, I am big on loyalty. And I do think there's so much more to talk about when it comes to loyalty and retention than just salary. Really proud of the fact, like our average tenure on our team right now is 7 years. Like that's really crazy that we have people 13 years and 5 years averaging out to 7 years of average tenure. But it's also what you said, Andrew. It's the grass ain't greener, and we've had 4 employees over the years that have returned to us after leaving for a higher paying job. That's the emotional leader in me that I bring them back because they were great employees. They left on good terms. We were open and honest about what they were going to pursue, but they all came back and we employed them again. And so I think candidates need to think about what's valuable to you. What's your number one priority? Is it time, money, respect, benefits, flexibility? Like there's so much there that I know we may not always offer the best salary. We're a small company, but we are doing everything else in our power to satisfy our employees and make this at least the best job they can have at this point in their career. So I think there is something to be said about loyalty. And when I look at all these individuals on our team, many of them have been in several positions with us. So they're not stagnant in their career. They're not only doing one thing. We've made it a two-way conversation. When they want to evolve, we work with them. We create job descriptions. We look at gaps in the business together. And that's how we've had loyalty and retention is we meet them where they are. But it's a tricky subject because I want loyalty from my employees, but if they looked at me, they're, an at-will employee. So you really need to have that foundation of trust because we can both say, yeah, we're not going to cheat on you, but it's just like a relationship sometimes. Like it really is. If things aren't going smoothly, you have to know that they may be looking.
And I think, Andrew, I want to touch on this because I think it's important for companies to pay attention to. The exit is equally as important as the entrance.
Yes.
Because it's how you treat people on the way out that is going to develop your culture and reputation within the market. So all of a sudden, Charlie and I have hundreds of stories of somebody who was the golden child, and within 24 hours, they are public enemy number one. I'm coming at you. I'm sending these legal letters. I'm going to show up at your kid's school and take them, and all this really aggressive stuff, right? And that is now your identity and reputation within the market. Who's going to want to join that company? Now, things happen. We're not naive to that. But I don't think companies understand, again, how important that exit, transition, whatever you want to call it, is from a reputation dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. And Charlie, again, I resonate with, from my own personal experience with what you're saying. I have at least 5 people that quit and we rehired them. And I loved telling them as they were on their way out, like, I really think this is a bad idea because I know this company and I know what may happen. And, I loved them coming back, and maybe part of that was the ego and being able to say, I told you so. But
The ripple effect
I think,
too is so underrated because they're coming back and all of their former now current colleagues again just saw that. And at the water cooler, they're like, wait, what happened? Didn't you quit? And oh man, it's scary out there. You don't want to go out there. And so those boomerang employees for us have become our best advocates and cheerleaders internally. But I love when I give them an opportunity to interview someone new for our team. Like their excitement, they're here for a reason, and they know what the other grass looks like.
yeah. And I think too, Brent, as you said, it's not just the entry, but the exit and how you carry yourself through that. That applies on both sides for everyone. I mean, something we talked about earlier, how it's a small industry and, these relationships always come back in one way or another. I think I've written something like 25 letters of recommendation now at this point for people, either who quit and left and then they didn't like where they were and they were trying to do something else. Or people who we fired. And, we fired them because maybe they weren't a good fit for one reason, but it didn't mean I wouldn't be willing to help them try to get another job doing something different. I tried never to be in a position where I was lying in doing so. But like for me, even though I'm not there anymore, I've written a couple letters of recommendation. And it's like I may not be running a business today, but I expect to be doing so again. Hopefully it's in brokerage one day. But I'd love to be able to hire some of these people again. And I think how you carry yourself through those situations drives whether or not people are going to want to come work with you again. So,
and do you know how much
and I
power
think
that has, Andrew? Like when you send somebody our way and vouch for them and put your name and reputation on the line, you don't think when Charlie and I go to the next company and say, hey, Andrew said this, look at this screenshot, look at this letter, that carries more weight than any resume. Let me tell you, this is the real stuff that people don't understand. Play nice. Play nice. It hits the streets.
Yeah. You guys mentioned buying books of business. And I think that's an interesting topic that to me has always felt so lazy. In just the way businesses are. It's one of the things I always thought that we stood out for, at least in my mind, from some of our competitors, was like we weren't trying to do that, and we believed in an actual training program, and that like at the end of the day, like I if you came over and your customers wanted to continue to work with you here, that's great. I mean, it speaks volumes to the work you do and how you execute. But like I always thought it was such a cheap approach to doing business in this industry, is just trying to buy talent with the book of business and basically say, hey, if you don't have that book of business, you're out of here. Um, how do you navigate that in your role and when you come across those situations? I mean, what are you telling the companies that are asking that of you? How do you think about that?
Tell them to call a competitor. Because it's not realistic. Like it's not in 2024. It's not realistic. I think the worst thing that's going to happen is we, being Charlie and myself, are setting somebody up to fail because they're hiring somebody for the wrong reasons. And if a candidate cannot understand that, that is a major red flag. Are you hiring me for the playbook or hiring me as the player? Right? Here's the other thing too. This is where candidates get themselves in trouble, Andrew. They overpromise and underdeliver. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, think their relationships are a lot deeper than they are. And you may have a person at a shipper, but guess what? That person may have somebody above them as well. And what we're seeing in the last 18 months is a lot of shippers are actually almost reverse consolidation. Hey, we worked with 80 brokers. We're actually getting that down to 30. I would love to help you out, brother, and I would love to give you a shot. I just can't do it. But how many employees are finding that out after they made the move? And all of a sudden now I've taken this big salary. I already have a bullseye on my back. 3 months are in and I haven't converted anything, and you're no better off. You got to be very conscious of this because it's a real thing in 2024.
Yeah, I usually will ask the client if they are not the owner. Did you bring a book of business over, and how'd that go for you? And what got in your way? Was it the non-compete, non-solicit? Was it just the whole concept of maybe you were at a dry van carrier, now you're at a flatbed carrier, and they can't service that? But I will really ask the client, like, if it wasn't them, what was your last hire that brought business over? And show me how your company does it successfully, because in my experience, it's about the human. Most humans in this industry, unless they're an agent or working for a very small brokerage, they will have non-solicits. And what we're selling is talent that has skills and actually has the ability to perform in the position with or without a Rolodex, knowing very well that if the Rolodex is that valuable, sure, it's available in 6 months or 12 months or 24 months when their non-solicit expires. But we're selling the human and the ability. When you think of somebody who's looked at a load board for the last 4 years, even if they don't bring business, they know something. They know who's shipping. They know who's carrying. They know, the freight cycles. And that's the knowledge that most companies are looking for. They just may not even realize it. They think they want that tangible book of business unicorn. It does not exist. And I think there's way too many barriers that are out of our control to ever promise that.
And there's been more knowledge surfaced over the last couple of years around the whole non-compete and non-solicit and all this stuff, right? We go on LinkedIn, it's what everyone's talking about. Going back to one of the trends that I'm seeing, though, is if I'm an employee, I might be protecting myself in this case. I may have 5 core customers that are my babies. These guys are rolling with me, whatever. I've seen more and more people now carve those out when they're going to a new organization. Look, I'm going to bring these in, but guess what? These 5 specifically are going to leave with me if I am to transition and move on well. So I'm starting to see a little bit more people be proactive as far as that goes, talking about trends too.
Yeah.
I think I've done one deal like that in my whole experience as a recruiter. I've done one team deal, and it was a wild one.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something that Charlie, you mentioned earlier, and it has to do with retaining talent.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, in the organization you've built, you've done a great job of retaining your talent. So, Charlie, what do you think? What is the recipe for an organization to retain talent? How do you do it in a way that, you get to a point where your average tenure is 7 years per employee?
Yeah. I mean, this is part of the advisory service that we offer. Clearly, recruiting is our bread and butter, but it's so much connection to retention. And this is something we're working with clients, coaching and workshops on retention. And it really comes down to, what do employees want to join your company and what do they want to stay at your company? And it's usually the same thing. So there's a lot of different pillars and categories that fall under it. But the way we break it down is, what employees, job seekers want is they want a company that has values that are aligned with their values, and they want to see that the company actually lives their values. They're not just words on a wall or on a website. They want to know what they're going to get beyond the paycheck. So there's the salary, there's the incentive, the commission. If you're interviewing at 2 companies, 2 brokerages across the street, we're talking about, maybe a $5,000-$10,000 difference. Other than that, everyone's playing in the same ballpark from compensation. So what benefits do you offer? What type of flexibility? Let's talk about, do you have caregiver days? Do you have floating holidays? Things that are important to people, especially people who may not always feel comfortable speaking up. The third thing that people look for is connection. This is like recognition and appreciation. It's feedback. It's check-ins. It's like, I just want to know that the person I'm working for cares about me. And then the last one is growth. And that to us is a 2-way conversation. We've tried to, push people in paths when we believed that they had a skill that they weren't fully embracing or excited about, and it hasn't worked. But what we found is when we really work with our employee, and it's consistent. Every 6 months, we're checking in, we're understanding what they're doing, what they want to be doing, and that's how we advance them. We're working together to create these new jobs. So yeah, it's the values, it's the big picture benefits, tangible and intangible, the connection, and then the growth opportunities. And there's so much there, but the bottom line is, no company offers everything. And it's not just about a paycheck. Like, I think that is the impression, but there is so much more. And Brent, you'll probably agree that most job seekers that call us, yes, they would like more money, but that is not the reason they're leaving.
I would agree. I would tap into 2 things. Number one, I think something that companies can really do and start to embrace is to reward and recognize people based on core values. So many companies, think about it. What is a president's club, right? I'm going to send you to Aruba and get you hammered because you sold the most stuff. Well, what about all the people behind the scenes? What about the finance department, the operational support? There's a lot of moving parts to any organization. Some of the most high-performing organizations that we've aligned with have actually rewarded people off of those core values, which I hope are bigger than just something on a wall. You have to live, eat, and breathe those, and rewarding people accordingly. Number two, I agree with Charlie when it comes to growth trajectory. What did I say about an hour ago? People will stay with you as long as they know that their dreams, goals, and ambitions can work under your umbrella. The minute that becomes to a halt is when they call us and want to leave. Are you creating almost an internal farm system for growth? If you start here and produce, you can get to X. If you're at X, you can get to Y. So many people just kind of silo people into one position and then they get stuck. And when people get stuck, they want change. So having a roadmap for people of growth, and we are a growth oriented company, will serve a lot of value as well.
And if it's
Great
not a
answers.
promotion or a salary raise, it's development. I mean, we pay our team to sit and watch TED Talks or to read a Brene Brown book because to us that is personal development that feeds into how they perform professionally. And so I think that's also satisfied a lot of our team members' appetites for growth. Like they may like the position they're in, but they've been in it 3 years, but they're confident and they're secure and they're making good money. It's like, what else? Well, let us help develop your leadership skills. Let us help you, build stronger relationships so you can do more in that role. But I'm a big believer in the personal growth and personal development investment goes a long way.
Well, they always say either you're learning and you're earning and you're going to be in one chapter. If you can combine both those and you learn and teach people and pay them, why would they leave? You've given them exactly what they want.
Most of them.
We're going to end on that. Those are some great answers. I mean, this has been awesome. Let me shout out first Brene Brown, The Power of Vulnerability. Her TED Talk changed my life. So
wow.
I think that I need to give a call out to. But thank you both. I think there was so much gold in this conversation, and there's a clear reason why you've both built very successful businesses and are two of the top recruiting firms in our industry. So thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all your insights. Thank you for the contributions you make to our industry and the companies and candidates you support. Any parting words?
No, I hope people take away that, yes, Brent and I are competitors. We've been, battling for 10 years, but we have a very amicable relationship. This is a $4 billion industry. There's plenty of opportunity for both of us. So let's do it together. That's really how we've both worked together all these years.
And I would agree. Just don't be afraid to collaborate, not always compete, right? You're going to need, and look, I'm a competitor. I like triggers. I like to compete against people. But the most value that I've found, in even in my relationship with Charlie, is the behind the scenes conversation that people don't see or know, or we're talking about trends and we're talking about all these things, right? There's value in playing nice within your industry with the right people as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, that's all we got. Thanks to our audience for listening, and we'll see you next week.